Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar today. Firstly, I would like to introduce myself. I am Kirsten McCurdy, the Marketing Manager for the AICPA and SEMA conferences in association Connect 365. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing Kevin Duffy, who is one of our speakers at the cybersecurity conferences being held in New York and London in November and December. Today, he will be presenting his webinar entitled So You're Under Attack, Simulating the Financial and Business Impacts of a Cyber Attack. I will now pass the presentation over to Kevin to continue. I hope you all enjoy the webinar today.
I had no intuitive idea on how to move forward is the kind of phrase you can avoid repeating if you attend the cyber attack simulation that I'll be hosting for AICPA and SEMA at the end of this year. Soren Skov said it because he and his executive team had failed to professionally prepare for the kind of breach that no IT team can guarantee to prevent. Soren is not the first and probably won't be the last chief executive to be unprepared for that kind of situation. Let's look at some other examples. I felt there was absolutely nothing at all that I could do. It's how Amy Pascal, for example, the former chief executive of Sony Pictures, responded to an attack largely attributed to the North Koreans. But where was the playbook? Where was the plan of action? Where was the command, the control, the triage, the decisiveness that is needed in any kind of business crisis? Amy and her team hadn't properly prepared. It was like an earthquake is a vivid and probably accurate description of how things felt at the Bangladesh bank when they realized they had been successfully hacked. But highlighting those feelings does not mitigate the fact that the Bank of Bangladesh had not properly prepared for the kind of attack that it experienced. I've been through denial, disbelief, frustration is another phrase I hope none of you ever have to repeat. And Robert Pera could have avoided experiencing much of that emotion if he had sat down with his executive team and simulated the kind of social engineering, the kind of cyber attack that led to the loss of millions of dollars at his organization. I am incredibly angry about this data breach. It is a natural human reaction from John Laguerre. After all, the breach he refers to happened at a very trusted supplier, Experian, who T-Mobile employed to prevent fraud. And yet, if John Laguerre's team had simulated attacks, considered how their suppliers put them at risk, if he had trusted but also verified how secure his information was being kept, perhaps much of the harm from that particular breach could have been understood and even prevented. It was petrifying, is how Dan Taylor, head of security at the UK's National Health Service, describes the attack the NHS suffered. Again, a very human response, but not the kind of paralysis you want your professionals to experience during such a crisis, and it's the kind of thing that they can prepare for. We struggled with remediation, is an honest, if very understated description of how Equifax responded to the breach that affected over half of adults across the United States. Richard F. Smith went on to tell the Senate hearing that his CISO and his CIO had both resigned before he did, but response, recovery, resilience do sit with the executive team, and it is appropriate that the chief executive and his or her direct reports have responsibility to rehearse for those kind of crisis situations. The awful truth is that I don't know. A very honest phrase said to the BBC during what Dame Dido Harding thought at the time was a major breach, She didn't know the answer to the question, was the data that has been exposed encrypted? Of course, with hindsight, that's the kind of thing you definitely want to know before you go on the national media. It's the kind of thing that can be brought out during a simulation. And that's why at the AICPA and CIMA events, we'll be running through a simulation of the kind of challenges you may face when the inevitable breach occurs at your organization. A feeling of being blindsided is a very common human reaction to a major breach. It's only during such events that many executives discover that they haven't been told about other serious security incidents. Recent research has shown that the top executives in many functions are normally not told about the worst incidents of the previous 12 months. And the breach that does actually happen, the breach that really catches you out, often it's not your own IT or security teams that tell you. Much more likely it will be somebody external. And indeed, they're telling you about something that actually happened many days, weeks, or even months earlier. These are the kind of insights that a simulation helps to drive home. You'll find that there are many people who believe they have special insights during a crisis of this type. The speed and ambiguity of such an event can be paralyzing. Do you know what has been breached? Who decides how soon and how to tell customers? Have you really been breached, or was it a supplier that was holding your data that has been hacked? Increasingly, your response will have to navigate international laws that are complicated and sometimes even conflicting. Laws across states and countries and continents that require you to comply with requirements at quite accelerated timeframes. Compliance will cost. Doing the right thing for your customers, protecting your brand reputation, that could cost even more. And you may find that there are disputes with your insurance or concerns about price gouging as you're a distressed buyer of the kind of forensic and remediation services, PR advice and legal counsel that is essential in a complicated breach situation. So during the cyber attack simulation I'll host for AICPA and CIMA, we'll give you an experience of the kind of executive decisions you'll have to take during a major breach. We'll put you on the board of a hypothetical organization, Acme, a company that makes everything. Acme are about to launch a fabulous new digital product that puts them in the hands, the home, and the heart of the high net worth individuals who use their services in 17 countries. You're about to launch that service and decide to bring in your IT director to give you an update. How are things going, Joe? Is everything secure? And Joe responds that absolutely. Everything's safe. You're happy to proceed with the launch of Acme Cares, this wonderful new digital service. But of course, if you take digital security seriously, you shouldn't just take Joe's word for things. As a board member at Acme, you might decide to respond differently. You might ask for evidence, even ask for a score, an independent score that compares the security of Acme as a whole and this new application in particular with your peers. Because frankly, just getting a thumbs up sign is a pretty useless answer unless it's supported by evidence, and ideally evidence with context that helps you, the non-specialists, to understand what it means. The correct answer at this part of the simulation is for the board to ask Joe for not just a thumbs up, but an independent score, one that ideally provides context in comparison with the peers, so the board can use that to engage and ask probing questions. Why is our cybersecurity posture lower than our peers? Does it need to be at least average? What is it that we're trying to do when we asked Joe whether to put thumbs up or thumbs down. As you can see, the Acme board might have realised at this point, if they had asked Joe for external objective evidence, that their cybersecurity posture is not as good as it probably should be. And the consequence of such a poor cybersecurity posture may well be a message like this. It's the message that I will start the cyber attack simulation for AICPA and CIMA with. It appears to show that Acme has been breached. It appears to show that perhaps a nation state has entered its systems. And at this point, as leaders, you will have to decide how to respond. A natural first question is, who do you inform? The chief executive, the police, a data protection officer if you have one, members of the IT team if you still trust them, your customers if your first action is to protect them, perhaps a lawyer, perhaps a crisis coordinator. There are in fact many alternative and additional vested interests that you may want to consider informing. Some people even at this point consider informing the stock exchange, but that may well be very premature. You have to ask yourself, are you delegating responsibility or simply diffusing it by telling many people? If you tell too many, is there a risk of a further data breach, of journalists finding out what is happening, or even of insider trading? Many people respond to that question by saying that it's the leader who should be told first. But whether your leader is a president or a chief executive, reflect on that for a moment. Your leader may not have been properly trained to lead a crisis of this character, and perhaps you actually have a pre-identified individual, perhaps a security director or head of business continuity, whose job it is to anticipate and coordinate the correct responses, only going to your most senior executives for particular decisions, but giving them a framework within which to make those choices and to lead effectively. There are many questions that can run through an executive's head during the first hours of breach response. Have we really been attacked by a nation state? Will our call center cope if we tell all our customers immediately? Will we be sued? Will I lose my job? Where is the playbook that should be telling me what to do? The most important and certainly urgent questions that your leadership team need to consider might not even occur to your executives if they haven't simulated a major cyber attack. As DLA Piper famously discovered, as shown in this picture, communications might not even stay on, and it's difficult to implement command and control when you can't contact your key colleagues. For a really effective response to a major breach, there are 11 functional areas that will need to have rehearsed how to respond to the breach well in advance. They will each need their own play sheet, their own guide to how to respond, and templates for how to recover. Not least among those functional areas is the finance department, that should have at least an idea of how to anticipate and estimate the costs, not just of the immediate IT forensics and remediation, but the impact on brand and on customer churn. What are you going to say to your department heads? What are you going to say to your shareholders about how you are minimizing the cost of breach recovery while protecting your reputation in the long term? These are the kind of areas that we will drill into during the simulation with AICPA and CIMA. They're the kind of things that you'll have an opportunity to vote on and to see in real time what your peers say they will do. And at each of the decision points during the simulation, I will offer experience based on responding to breaches at hundreds of organizations to help you lead an effective response and not have to repeat some of those frightening quotations I gave you at the beginning of this presentation. I look forward to seeing you at those events.
Thank you very much for that engaging and interesting webinar, Kevin. You can email any questions you have to me or submit them through the Q&A box on the right-hand side of your screen within the next 10 minutes. I will then relay these to Kevin to answer for you very soon. As a thank you for attending this webinar, I would like to give you a special gift of 15% off the standard conference fee of our cybersecurity conferences that Kevin will be speaking at in November and December. You'll receive a follow-up email tomorrow with your discount code and link where this will be automatically applied. If you are an AICPA or CIMA member, we already have a special rate available for you on the website. Remember, if you can't attend in person, the New York conference will also be streamed online. The recorded slides will be sent to you very soon that you can watch on demand. Thank you very much for joining this webinar, and I hope you have a great day.